Hi, everyone, and welcome to the 5th Annual Entrepreneur Music Conference. My name is Nim Aglawat, and I use they, them pronouns, and I'm a musician, audio engineer, and also a member of the Hamilton Music Advisory Team. As we start today's discussion panel, we recognize that we are situated upon the traditional territories of the Erie Neutral, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Mississaugas. This land is covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, which was an agreement between the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe to share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. We further acknowledge that this land is covered by the Between the Lakes Purchase, 1792, between the Crown and Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Today, the city of Hamilton is home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we recognize that we must do more to learn about the rich history of this land so that we can better understand our roles as residents, neighbors, partners, and caretakers. With these intentions in mind, we gather as members of Hamilton's music industry to share our own knowledge and experiences. This is the second time we have hosted the conference virtually, and we are very grateful to have many local musicians joining us live on Zoom and watching on Facebook. Musicians are recognized as core creators within the local music industry, and without you, the industry cannot grow or thrive. We thank you for your work and creativity and want to see you grow and succeed as entrepreneurs and musicians, which is why we organized this annual professional development event. I personally had the pleasure of being a panelist during last year's conference, and I'm a big supporter of what it offers. I'm also friends with lots of the panelists, and yeah, I think you have a lot in store for you. The annual conference is possible through the work of volunteers on the Hamilton Music Advisory Team and the musician subcommittee with support from the City of Hamilton staff. The conference is also possible because of the wonderful moderators and speakers who are able to participate. So today I'm happy to introduce a moderator for today's topic, Joe Lukis. Joe is a music marketing specialist and owns the local marketing agency Just Really Good, which I've had the pleasure of working with. And Joe, I know you've also played other roles in the music industry, so I'll let you further introduce yourself as well as our other panelists.
Thank you, Nim. Thanks for that awesome introduction. My name is Joe Lukis, and I do run a music marketing agency based out of Hamilton. I'm from Australia originally, and I have been working doing music marketing for the past decade now. I was a music photographer before that, and yeah, I've worked at major labels, I've worked at independent labels, and now I, through my agency, I work with a lot of independent artists and all the way through to major labels. So I'm kind of covering all bases, but what I like to do is have a really educational component to my marketing with artists, so that I'm a big sort of fan of empowering artists to be able to take control of their careers, their music releases, and everything that goes along with monetizing their art. So in an authentic way. So this is a great topic for me to kind of be moderating today that will help independent artists and those that are signed kind of get their brands together and kind of show the world exactly who they are and why they create what they do. So yeah, I'm really excited to be talking about authentic branding. I think this is really helpful for artists of any level. You can be starting fresh with branding, or you can be refreshing your brand after a new, like at the beginning of a new release cycle. So it's something that artists will be looking at continually throughout their careers, no matter what level they're at. So our conversation that we're going to have with our panelists is going to last about 30 minutes. And then we're going to take the last sort of 15 minutes to take on any of your questions and answer them for you live. So you can leave your questions in the Zoom chat, or you can add them to the Facebook Live video at Ham on Music. And now I'd like to introduce the three speakers that we have with us today. We're really lucky to have an awesome, diverse group with us today. We have Linnea, who performs as Ellis, local music artist. Oh, sorry, I'm out of order. We have JR Bebel, who is also a local Hamilton artist. And we also have Steph Montani, who is a great photographer and video director. So I'm gonna get them each to just give you a little intro. So I might start with JR Bevel, if you want to tell us who you are and what you do.
Perfect. I'm a hip hop musician here in Hamilton, Ontario, and I've been making music for well over a decade right now, almost a decade and a half. I obviously I really just love the genre, and I'm really thankful to be here with such a great group of people. And if anybody was willing or wanted to know, my name J.R. Bevel is from, if anybody's ever seen the movie Cool Runnings, it's a famous character within the actual movie. His name is Junior Bevel. Bevel in everybody would know. Bevel means sharp. So perfect to explain to you guys why my brand of being sharp and neat and clean cut that's why I'm here, right? So thanks for everybody coming out and being here so far. And yeah, look forward.
Awesome. Thank you, JR. I will move to Ellis now, if you want to, or Linnea, if you want to let us know your background.
Yeah, hey, I'm Linnea. My music project is called Ellis, and I've been doing it since about 2018. I have put out a couple EPs on a record, and yeah, I live in Hamilton. Yeah, that's me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Steph.
Hey, I'm Steph. I've been a photographer for 15 years, and I just recently moved into the music industry about 3 years ago. I am equally as passionate about music as I am photography. I just can't play an instrument or sing, so I do the visual parts.
That's amazing. And you do it so well. Steph works with so many local artists and is just killing it.
Thank you.
I might add. Okay, so I'm going to kick off some questions, and I'm going to kind of randomly like throw them to different panelists. But if, you know, like, just let me know if you have anything you want to add, just feel free to jump in. It can all be just a big discussion. So the first thing I want to start off with is the definition of what branding means in relation to an artist, a musician, or a band, people releasing music, because it has, you know, different meanings in different worlds, but we're specifically talking about artists. So Linnea, do you want to kick off with what that means?
Totally.
What do you think it means?
Yeah, I think to me, branding is like what you are projecting into the world, essentially. Of yourself on the internet or otherwise, just the way that you're presenting yourself, and in turn the way that you're being perceived by the people who are following you. Yeah,
awesome. JR, do you want to weigh in there? What does it mean to you? What is branding to you as an artist?
To me, branding is the close-knit relationship between who you are as an artist in person and your overall music and sound. So similar to Prince, his thing is purple, right? So there's so many different people that do this so well that yeah, I think branding, like I said, I don't want to get too off topic, but branding to me is really something that everyone can define you by, with or without telling them.
Totally. Yeah, that's a really good way of explaining it, I think. And Steph, do you want to kind of also weigh in?
Yeah, I mean, Linnea and JR put it great, but I think it's the personality that you put out there into the world in front of your music. It's how people are perceiving you online mostly now. And it's the way you speak and what you support. Like, it's more than just a visual thing. It's everything you do online and everything that's not just your art.
Totally, because there is so much of a window now into artist world where there wasn't, you know, it used to be so controlled pre-social media, pre the internet. Companies and labels and things like that could really control exactly what the public saw and what they didn't, but now it's kind of all out there, and more fans are expecting a piece of you, like a piece of knowing exactly who you are. So yeah, it's definitely something, it's a choice that artists have to make, I think, as well, about how much they want to let people in, and we can get into that later on as well, but that's something to consider. So my next question is, why is branding important to marketing music successfully? Because, you know, a lot of artists get into music just purely for their love of music. They just want to be in the studio, they want to write, record, perform, and they don't want to deal with all the other stuff? Like they're not, visual artists necessarily, or so can they just record their music and just like put it up online and leave it at that? Why is branding so important? JR, do you want to start there?
I've seen artists with a pretty big following kind of not do too much with music and put it out. And even as a big artist, you will get no attention putting out music. As we all kind of know, or if people don't know, Spotify puts out 60,000 songs a day. So it's like the lifeline, I feel. It's the bloodline that kind of brings the heartbeat and life to your actual project or single. It's just what needs to be done to associate one with the other and formulate some type of interest to want to further see your brand.
Totally. Yep. Steph, do you want to kind of weigh in on what the importance is of having a brand?
Yeah, definitely. We live in a really visual world nowadays. Things that people are judging cover. And if you go on somebody's social media and the branding isn't clear, you might be more likely to kind of skip over that artist. Whereas if you have beautiful branding, you're going to be like, yeah, I'll check out their work. So I think that people need to be aware of how visual the world we live in is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And Linnea, do you want to touch on maybe some of the non-visual, like why the non-visual elements important as well to an artist?
For sure. I think that obviously making art is a huge part of being an artist, but the other part is I think part of also why we make art, and it's like to connect with the world around us and to connect with people. And now social media is the best way to do that. And whether or not it's like talking about imagery or aesthetic, it's a way of communicating with people who are interested in the art that you're making in a more personal way, for sure. And it's not just Instagram, it's whatever, Twitter and even just direct messages and whatever else, but conveying yourself like sort of like as a human being gives this opportunity to connect through these avenues that are now deemed essential to sort of having successful releases. And yeah, so I do think it's bigger than just the way it all looks.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's interesting to look at a whole range of different artists and how, especially with the non-visual elements of their brand and how they talk to their fans, there's some artists that have a real mystique around them and they don't give much away, and that can really work for certain type of artists. And then there are other artists that are just so one-on-one with every single fan, and they put in the time to reply to comments and build those personal relationships. And it's totally different, but it can work. It depends on the artist and it depends on the fan base and the genre and all that. But I find it really interesting that there's like a whole range now of options for how much you want to let an audience into your personal world, to your creative world. It's cool that it's there, and I can see it being a struggle for some artists who don't want to necessarily do that and engage all the time. It can be a real mental load to kind of always be on with your fans and available to them and things like that. So I think that's something as part of branding, artists have to think about, like, where do they draw the line and how open they want to be and how that works into the message of their music and things like that.
Totally.
So the next question is, when we do talk about branding for an artist, what does that include in terms of sort of tangible things they can actually work on, create, and have available during a release plan? Just so that, the people who are watching today can actually take away some things that they, maybe a list of things that they can start to work on if they have a release coming up. Steph, do you want to start with some assets that you would recommend?
Yeah, this was a tough question for me because I feel like there's a lot of assets that you need for a release, or you could get away with minimal assets. It really depends on your rollout plan. I start everything with a to-do list. That's like
same.
So that I can write.
Yeah,
we are one and the same, Joe.
I know.
Photos, video, that's pretty important. Press kits are probably the most important for a successful release, in my opinion. Bios. I feel like I'm like dropping the ball on this question because I'm not a musician.
No, that's fine. You could just talk about
Loud.
the visual stuff if you want, because obviously that's your world. You're creating like promo photos, single covers, EP, album covers, and music videos. You know, that forms the basis of so much content and really does communicate like a huge percentage of an artist brand, being that that's like their core pieces of content that they show to people.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, I might ask, we'll throw to JR and see what your take of what do you like to have ready to go kind of thing in terms of expressing your brand during a release campaign.
Just to piggyback a little bit off of what you already ran off of, like there are so many, it's almost endless nowadays that on the things that you can kind of associate with your brand. Like over time, I've associated a lot of things like I've tried with colors. Cars can be in that realm of things, tech. It can be like, I don't know if anybody can kind of see it, but I've always been working with this old school kind of haircut with one low and one high. So it's kind of like a branding thing, right? It's something that anything nowadays, a haircut, you know what I mean?
Totally.
One thing that I wanted to mention that I seen not too long ago, and I wasn't ordered to order one of the pizzas, Lisa LaRocca and LT the Monk, they did a pizza for LT the Monk. And I was blown away. I'm like, this is astounding. This is what music is all about. And I'm so glad to see it's happening in our city. So things like food, pizza, you know what I mean? So just about everything. And I like to use a good variety of outside source things like merch and stuff. I have a lot of day ones, entertainment gear and different stuff that's on the work. So it can be just about anything that fits you. Like I said, Prince, his thing was purple. It's just a color. So there's so many things you can.
Yep. I agree. There are so many things. And Ellis, do you want to maybe narrow it down to, sorry, I keep calling you between Linnea and
That's
Ellis.
okay.
I just pick one every time. Do you want to go through some of the things that you always like to have, like some of the key things that you feel like, you know, even if you're doing it on a super low budget, you're DIYing it, you're doing it on your own, what are the things that you should really kind of work on having before you put out a new track or an EP or something?
Yeah, totally. I have done releases like completely independent. I've done releases with a label. So I've kind of worked in like a very, very DIY budget and then also with a bit of a budget. But I think regardless, there's some things that I have always done before a release. I mean, Steph mentioned a lot of the really important sort of logistical stuff. I think having a bio, having promo photos is really important, album art, any kind of like visuals. If you can do a music video, that's awesome. If not, they call them visualizers, which can be a short, more basic kind of even just on a loop kind of visual to accompany a song, so you can throw it on YouTube and there's like some aesthetic element. And a lot of that can be done like with a very little budget. Another thing that I have done for all my releases, which I try to get a bit creative because I am not a visual artist, but I want to have content and things to post and things to talk about and things to connect with listeners. So I've made like little DIY zines for every release and lyric sheets that I've posted, things like that. I think for me, the lyric content of my music feels really important. So I find that's a good way to kind of like draw more attention to that and make it a bit more of like a talking point or yeah, something else to share that's not just like photos of myself or whatever. So yeah,
that's awesome. And I think that something to remember with anything physical you do like that, that's really unique. Like if you do make a unique physical piece of artwork or like lyric sheet or something that goes out to people, the benefit is that people always share that stuff online. So even though it takes you time to hand make something and send it out, it means so much to fans, but you also get that secondary kick on effect of you know, people are going to share it, all their friends will see it, and it'll kind of go out from there. So I think that's something really great to do, but it actually has that knock-on effect of being a piece of, it becomes a piece of digital content, even though it wasn't originally meant to be that way. So that's a really cool thing to do, that you can kind of expect to get some like a little bit of extra mileage from, I suppose. Okay, so we have some ideas of sort of what we need to create. So if a musician is either just completely starting out fresh, or they're kind of in a bit of a rebrand phase where they're at the beginning of a new campaign and they want to kind of, you know, really solidify their brand, how do they get started? Do they, you know, start brainstorming? Do they ask their friends? Do they make a mood board on Pinterest? Can we get some ideas about sort of the process at the very beginning? So I might throw to JR for that one first.
For someone like what I like to do, especially rebranding, going into the 20th century and genres, it's hip hop. I'm a hip hop artist, so the genre of hip hop kind of flips and flops, changes a lot, I feel. So one of the things is I like to write out points of where I am in my life, because personally I've branded my life closely knit with my music, so that I never have the issue of authenticity. Is this person real to their brand? So I feel like that's a key point for artists, especially nowadays, with everybody wants to take a little piece of you, right? When they're trying to be a fan. Nowadays, people are like trolling you to be fans, right? So I go through a lot of point lists and certain things like that, and updating my brands, updating my social medias and brands as I'm changing, right? So everybody likes to see new, fresh, updated things, and social media nowadays gives everybody updates on when you do those things. So I feel like those things are very important.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks. Steph, I wanted to ask you, what's a bit of your process that you go through when you're working with artists and trying to plan out this stuff from the very beginning? What do you focus on?
Yeah, well, I am a sucker for a good mood board. Like, I think I mood board my entire life. So I usually have a mood board ready to go before I even approach the artist about working together, because I like to have something that I can show them that I think they would love. And then from there, we build on the mood board together. So I'm huge on the mood board direction.
Do you use Pinterest for that?
I do, yeah. I know it's
Pretty
not
simple,
the most professional thing to just send a Pinterest link over, but
it's the standard. I think everybody uses Pinterest. It's so easy, and you can pull in references from like all over the internet. So I think it's probably the best option, really, and it's, you know, affordable. Since it's free, you can kind of collaborate and share on that, which is also good because you can throw your ideas in, band members or artists can throw their ideas in, you can kind of get to a point where and I think it's important also you know, to think about things as like fashion and style comes into it a lot. It doesn't matter the genre, it can be completely different, but that's a huge part obviously for your visual for your videos and photos.
Wardrobe is huge.
Yeah,
I think that not enough artists put weight on the wardrobe, because it can really change the whole mood. You can go stand in a field and wear jeans and a t-shirt, or you can wear a dress and it's like a whole different vibe. So
that's a big, that's something you kind of need to plan out, I think, quite early, because you need to source the clothes, whether they're, you know, particular style or vintage or whatever you want to do. Like that sort of thing needs to a bit of forethought, so that you can have it all available for when the shoot happens and the video happens, and then it all ties in together with your content that flows on from there. Linnea, do you want to add to that? What's your process like?
Yeah, mood boards for me too are big. I think before I do a shoot or a music video or even just any release, I like making a mood board of either, for album art, I might like look at other album art that I like and just think about what I like about all of it, color schemes, imagery that kind of connects to the music or to the songs. I have a thing where like I love vintage 90s, and you'll see me wearing vintage 90s in videos or on stage or in photos often. And in fact, someone just tweeted the other day listening to Ellis on the floor in a vintage 90 or something, and I was like, that's the brand. Yeah, exactly. So I think like when you can kind of like see in front of you just the things that you like and the things that you feel represented by or whatever, it can just help make it more tangible.
Yeah, absolutely. And so just is now sort of joining us for this chat, and they're thinking like, oh God, my stuff is all over the place. I really don't have a brand. It's like, I did a little bit of this, I did a little bit of that, and my socials look a bit of a mess, and I'm not really sure what to wear on stage. If it's all over the place, what should they do? Is there any advice for sort of like pulling that back in? Do you wipe things off your social media and start fresh, or do you just move on? JR, do you want to let us know what you would do?
I would think, this is how I would approach the situation. First of all, treat it almost like a bucket with a hole in the bottom. It's better to just stick your finger in the bottom and salvage what's left than to try to scoop out from the top and try to make miracles. You kind of have to give yourself a break, because you have to understand, as far as you think you are back, there's someone one step further than you, right? So you kind of just take a second. Meditation is a great key for this kind of thing, because it's like that alone moment, silence, when you kind of just refer things back in your brain. So that's something that I would do and have done. Sat down with myself and say, what direction as a person am I going, and what direction would suit my music? So then as you go through, I just pinpoint the social media sites that are most key to you, that are doing the most for you, and start with those, and kind of one by one rebrand the bio, the pictures, you know what I mean? You just kind of have to take your time and just get at it. But like I said, give yourself a break, because no one's perfect.
Yeah, that's really good advice. Linnea, do you have any advice in that realm?
Yeah, I think like we all can scroll back in our Instagram feeds and find some cringy stuff, like whether it's our artist Instagram or a personal one or whatever. When I first started posting on Instagram, I used Instagram filters on everything. I think we all did.
And borders.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, if you see something and you're like, this does not represent me anymore, just archive it. And you can like go through your feed and you can archive things, and they're not gone forever. You can bring them back if you're ever like, oh, I actually really liked that post or whatever. You can clean things up, and you can just make it look a bit cleaner. But also I think there's this fine line between like being like too intentional almost and being authentic, and it's like I think it can be dangerous to overthink it too much, and then it makes you feel less human and more like some kind of like a brand. And I think there's a way you can be both. But I think like a question I would ask myself is like, does this represent me well? And if the answer is no, I can probably do away with it. And if the answer is yes, probably in the end it's going to keep some cohesion.
No, that's a great answer. I really like that idea of kind of cherry picking the things that you don't feel that comfortable with. And in that sense, when you scroll back through your feed, it should actually look a little bit more cohesive. Let us never forget that Beyonce back in the day had a picture of a Kit Kat on her feed. But if anyone follows Beyonce now, there are no Kit Kats, let me tell you. Steph, what do you think on this? What's your take?
Yeah, well, to play off what Linnea said, I definitely agree with removing things that don't represent who you are. I am notorious for cleaning off my Instagram feed. I keep it at like between like 35 and 80 posts. And I've definitely gotten lost in wiping my whole Instagram and then slowly putting things back up. I don't think that's a great thing to do, but if you are rebranding, it is good to clean off the Instagram.
Yeah.
I think that I guess again, like I go back to visuals, like it's important to have a visually appealing online presence, I guess, but you don't want to go too far with it because people still want to be able to go to your page and see stuff.
Yeah, you need to have like a history. Otherwise, you if you're not big enough already, like some huge artists, there's a bit of a trend where they just wipe everything, and they like go dark on social media, and then they pop back up with the new, and that can totally work. If you're huge, that can totally work. But if you aren't, it could also appear that you've just given up music and you've moved on and you've like shut down your account. So it's probably not best to play with that technique unless you're a huge artist. But yeah, I think that's great. You can kind of definitely also just leave, you know, maybe archive a few posts, leave what you have, but then people notice, because especially because we get fed this stuff in a feed, like it's constantly, we're seeing the newer things, and people don't necessarily have time to scroll way back through your past. As long as you start to post some of that new stuff you've been working on that is a little bit more cohesive, it will begin to look more and more, and people will clue into the fact that you have something coming. You can drop hints, even if it's just like a change in color scheme, and like everything you post is sort of within a palette or something that is, you know, plays into the artwork or the lighting in the video or something like that. You can kind of just gently start to go in that direction, and people will come along for the ride, because they're used to artists having cycles and completely changing, you know, be a musical style or visual style. So I don't think it's ever too late to kind of start fresh and just evolve, basically.
One thing that's funny about what you said, like when you're huge, you can get away with that. On the contrary, I've noticed Justin Bieber is such a funny Instagram account. I don't know if any of you follow him, but he is so chaotic. Like, it's not cohesive at all. And in fact, he posts like photos of like the Toronto Maple Leafs. He had one like week where he was posting about how he didn't like the new lids on the Tim Hortons coffee cups, and he had like probably like 10 posts specifically about Tim Hortons coffee cups on his Instagram grid. So I think when you're huge, you can get away with anything.
Yeah, and that goes for so many different aspects of what we do.
Totally.
Yeah, I think that and that's funny, because there are some artists that are so precious about it. Even at that level, they want to be really aesthetic about everything. But I think that it doesn't matter, because people can do anything and you will still make a lot of money. So cool. So I kind of wanted to get into some more about the non-visual parts. We've talked a lot about the assets that you can create, videos and photos, and your aesthetic on socials and things like that. But things like the messages in your music and a stance that you might take on a particular social issue, the way you communicate with fans or don't, you know, whether you keep that air of mystery or whether you don't, all those sorts of things that aren't the visual stuff, even stage presence and performance. Linnea, do you want to chat about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I think when I was just starting to post on Instagram, specifically from Ellis, I felt like, oh, my music is like generally kind of melancholy, so I should keep this like kind of sad vibe going or something. But then that didn't really feel authentic to me, because I'm a generally like I like being funny, and I like being happy. So I was like, I don't think that like you have to be so mysterious or so like one-sided. And again, I think it comes back to how much of yourself you're willing to share. But I think also understanding that humans contain multitudes, and you can present whichever sides of yourself you feel comfortable with. I think as long as you're using your authentic voice, and it's coming from you, then it will feel connected in some way. But also in terms of like messaging, depending what kind of music you make or what you're singing about, for me, I write mostly about like some personal stuff and about my feelings and stuff. And so I kind of like to share more stuff about the way I'm feeling, and I sing about mental health, and I like to talk about that, and I like to make that a conversation. I think that will vary a bit artist to artist, and what's important to you, and what you are trying to communicate in your music, and what you are trying to the ways that you're trying to connect with people, and the way you engage with the people who are engaging with you. But I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it's different, like different genres are going to be really different. I wanted to ask JR and a question that I'm interested in as a fan of hip hop a lot about your genre that you create in is kind of grandiose, and you kind of want to show off, and you want to be like the best before you've even started, kind of thing, because that is the whole vibe of a lot of hip hop, not all of it, of course, but how do you find that balance between being authentic and kind of fronting and like, you know, tapping into that persona of like the already successful hip hop artist, you know?
That actually is that's a great question for me, because honestly, that's something that we as hip hop artists deal with all the time. So like, in the words of Idris Alba, hip hop is bossy. It's just something that we have to do in a way, right? But the fine balance between it is where you're gonna really find your true 100% fans, right? Your super fans. Hip hop has gotten a bad stigma, I feel. Well, not to say bad, a different stigma over the course of the last little while, right? So a lot of hip hop artists like to present their brand as something more than they actually are in real life, right? So my personal approach on that has always been, my brand is me. Like I am, like my brand is not literally like made off of anything but how I already act and communicate with my fans and people. So anybody that knows my music and knows me personally can kind of always relate the two. Loyalty and longevity and just a classic shark type of look has always been something that like I've tried to stick with, right? Almost like a really good friend kind of thing, right? So as you were saying, hip hop gets a different look at it. So you kind of have to do a fine balance, and that's what I've done, so that in the case of anybody kind of questioning my authenticity, it's literally who I am, right? So it's easy for me to express my brand even through like expressing my personality, right? That was the easiest way for me, because I can't stand artists that are lying on the music. Let's just be real.
It's a bit of a,
There's stories. There's a lot of storytelling in hip hop as well, but I just like, after a little while, you have to, in order to keep those core super fans, you have to draw the balance to say, this is who that person is and I can relate. Right?
Yeah, and I think especially in hip hop lately, in the last probably like 5-10 years, there's been a lot more of a broad range of topics to rap about, and to include mental health, emotions, like that's being touched on in a way that hasn't before, you know, like sexuality it's becoming more, you know, as a genre, it's becoming a lot more accepting of different ways to be. So I think that's amazing. And it doesn't necessarily push people down that one path of having to be a particular way to be a hip hop artist. So that's great.
The more that I do that kind of strategy is the more that I kind of find myself in a standalone position, because what I'm doing kind of requires me to create something new instead of follow the norms, right? So
yeah.
I think
and that is how you're authentic, and that's how, you know, you will connect with more people, because I think I've seen time and time again with artists of all genres, authenticity is what people need to become emotionally connected to you. They, you know, there's a big difference between a listener and an actual fan who will come to a show, they want to meet you at the desk and buy a t-shirt, you know, like that's a huge leap still from someone who hears you on a playlist casually and doesn't really care, to someone who really cares. And I think making that leap, it's an emotional bond. It's like a friendship, or it's like meeting someone and getting to know them. The more authentic that they can see you are, and it doesn't mean sharing everything with them, but yeah, that'll really strengthen the bond, and that's how you get those core fans that you know, not to sound like music industry about it, but they're the ones that can sustain your career, because they will spend money buying merch and supporting you and coming out to shows and things like that. So and so we're sort of almost getting into the Q&A stage, but I just wanted to quickly go through. I'm going to start with Steph, and sorry to put you on the spot, but are there any artists that you think are just nailing their branding that we should check out? Is there anyone that comes across your radar or that you work with and you just think like, damn, they're so good, everybody should have a look at an example of them?
Yeah. Well, first, Ellis.
Yes, amazing. Yeah.
I'm gonna bring up one of my favorite artists is Loviet.
Yes.
She
Also.
is just killing her branding.
Yeah.
And the Dirty Nail. I love the Dirty Nails branding. I think that they have done such great work throughout the whole pandemic. They've been so strong with connecting with their fans. And I just love the way they've been presenting themselves as well. So those 3 artists.
Okay, that's great, because I think everyone can kind of jump off this call and go have a look and just, you know, maybe kickstart some ideas. Linnea, who do you like to look at the branding of and kind of use as an example of strong branding, no matter what style it is?
Oh, I mean, I love I love how Billie Eilish does like a rebrand every record cycle, and like you were saying earlier, JR, like change your haircut, like change the way you dress or whatever. I think that's really cool. It's like a little bit extra, but I think it's really cool. And then, I mean, my partner's in a project called Chastity. I think he does a really good job, and I think I've learned a lot about it from him as well. So he's just got a really like cohesive, like kind of color, like suburban youth kind of like vibe to every single thing that he does, and I think it's awesome.
Yeah, right. And JR, who do you like? Who do you think? I know you said Prince, which is obviously a huge iconic one. Yeah. Anyone else?
I listen to a lot of old school music as well. I like to take a lot from the past. But like Kanye is one person that like I grew up on listening to his music. I know that he's out there sometimes, you know what I mean? But his style, he's always related one to the other, especially with astounding visuals that have more than just the visual. There's a meaning behind it. There's like Runaway, he did like ballerina dances, and like his new rebranding is more of a Christian or religious based music, but he's still finding his way to tap into the original organic hip hop fans that have been and are growing with him. So he's one person that I really admire and look into. Someone like Travis Scott, as simple as it is, he does very well at branding a lot of his stuff, upcoming albums and such. Drake is top notch. Someone locally that I really look up to in that retrospect would be Parks CC. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of him. He's actually one of my favorite artists here in the city. And he does an amazing job, even on an independent level, to just make sure he's on top of just something new, right? He reaches out to a lot of artists. They do a lot of collaborations, a lot of fun videos to gain the fans that are in their area and their range of genre, right? So
yeah, for sure. Cool. All right, thanks guys. That's amazing. I like Beyonce's branding. I know nobody has Beyonce's budget, and it's just so over the top. It's hilarious, but she's got the full like glamour couple thing going on, and she always posts like a series of images when she's getting, you know, like dressed up for an event. It's all very serious, but it's so gorgeous, and you know, she gets to show off all her fancy things. So that's like I mean, it's very particular branding, but yeah, that's one that I think, and it's funny because I do remember like her, and Billie Eilish is the same. Her branding is strong, and it really has been all along, but she started with like her Instagram account used to be like where are the avocados or something, and then eventually in like 2019 or something, her team was like, okay, we need to get a little bit more serious about this, we're going to change it to @Billie Eilish. But you know, she's always maintained, like I've heard that she uses the like Instagram TV versus stories versus like her feed content. To some of it's directly her, like her feed has always been her, and then she lets Instagram TV be kind of like the third party view. So her team will go out and film you know, behind the scenes stuff at shows, and then it won't be directly her. But I think by differentiating the channels and posting different content on different channels, fans know to expect when it's actually Billie talking and when it's her team talking, and that's a good way of keeping the authenticity. But as she got huge, she obviously needed more content and more things to come out than she was ever going to be able to even appear that she was posting. So that's a technique I heard that Billie does, and I think that's a really good idea to keep those channels separate. So we have some questions that I'm going to get to now. So how far in advance, Steph, I might throw it to you for this one because you're so involved in pre-preparing for a release and making content, how far in advance should people kind of develop all these assets and get photos taken and things like that before the release date?
Yeah, so I've been working with Lovia on her release, and we started in March, and her album is out in November.
Mhm.
So I would say like 6 months is like a good start. Video takes a long time to edit. Photos a month out. You want those to be fresh. They need to look like what you look like on your release.
Mhm.
So I would say a month for photos.
Yeah.
But give yourself like 6 months to do the creative planning and
Yeah.
locking in dates and get the editing done properly, because if you're crunching things, it's gonna show.
Yeah, and it's also reliant, releasing music is so many, there's so many deadlines along the way.
So
If you
many.
miss one, it's like dominoes. You can kind of, you know, everything else has to move, you have to alert different teams, and it becomes a nightmare. So as far in advance as you can have that stuff, other than that, you know, the photos that kind of do need to be quite fresh, is a really, really good idea. And it helps every other team member that you work with too, because they don't have to keep moving things. And so there's been a lot of talk about Instagram. We have talked a lot about Instagram, it's true. Is that the social account that artists should focus on? Linnea, what is your take on that?
I think like in the last while, yeah, it's the one that people seem to have been engaging the most with, because you've got the grid posts and you've got the story posts, which are easy to reply to. You can reshare when people mention you in their story. You can reply to comments, you can reply to DMs. There's IGTV, there's like so many different elements of engagement beyond just posting photos. However, I think that TikTok is, we haven't mentioned at all, but I think is the new thing, and it is so scary to me, but I am trying to figure it out, because I think like all social medias go through trends, and I feel intimidated trying to keep up often with just the internet, but I also feel a responsibility, I think, as an artist planning releases, to kind of know like where are people engaging with music, and where do I need to be for that. So I think that TikTok is important.
Yes, I agree. TikTok is really important, and it can be so overwhelming because it is a very like fast platform, and not all artists have that kind of dynamic that works with that. But I will say that TikTok's a whole nother discussion that we can have an entire panel on, but it is great for a few reasons for artists. One is that there's a community for literally everything on TikTok. I mean, the most niche, weird, little tiny, there's a world for it. So you can find your people, they'll be on TikTok, like absolutely. So that's cool, because you can tap into a community and become part of that. And the other cool thing that TikTok, something that differentiates it from any other social media, all the other social channels and streaming platforms you have, you start from zero and you build followers one by one. And it's hard and it takes a long time. TikTok, you have the opportunity to post one thing and have it go viral. They have a very different algorithm for how they recommend content. So if you tap into something that people like, it can go crazy from nothing. So you can then build, you know, followers will then come. It kind of works in reverse to how if you can get something to go viral, which obviously no promises, but yeah, if you kind of nail that content that people are looking for on TikTok and find that community, use the language of TikTok, it's the only social media platform where you can be discovered by thousands, if not millions of people, if you just nail a few seconds of video content, which is like, it's wild, it's kind of like a lottery, but there's no other social media that gives you that chance. So that is something I like to touch on with TikTok, because there's a big difference there with everything else. So we have another question. As a songwriter, I like to explore a lot of topics and stories and concepts that often have nothing to do with my personal life. How do I maintain a level of authenticity that allows people to feel I'm being honest, even though my stories are not necessarily about me? JR, do you want to weigh in on that one?
think that's something that that's a hard thing to connect together, but it's just something that you kind of have to work at slowly and just make sure your authenticity is you're true to the stories at minimum, that you're a storyteller. I know some musicians like per se like a KRS-One. He tells stories, a lot of stories, right? Some of the stories are false, or he kind of keeps it in the air, whether it's false himself, a third party that he's speaking about.
Mhm.
That sometimes can be the mystery that you're looking for. Sometimes it's just all about setting yourself aside and saying that like that you're a storyteller and telling the stories in a way that like it's more than one. Because if something's one off, then your fans are kind of, you have more of the opportunity to kind of be looked at as authentic, I'd say. So like, just stick to it. Just stick to it, and maybe brand it on a playlist or an album or something set aside so that people can relate to the stories, right? Like even a story about something in general that everyone loves. Like you said, if it goes viral, then everybody's going to be looking for the next story from you. So you could kind of get, not say pushed into that box, but you can, if that's what you're looking to do as a genre and a focus for your brand, there's a few different ideas to kind of keep authentic with you.
Yeah, I like what you said about putting things into a playlist or packaging them in that way, because in that sense you can kind of build this narrative around the stories that you're telling, that they don't appear as yours, but it does appear as a creative project. Like you can, if you brand it in that way with the artwork and the story, the way you talk about it as an artist. Certainly musicians have done that in the past. I think people can be quite used to that. So yeah, if you package up the content in a way that appears to be built around a set of stories or something that, you know, that's I mean, songs have been storytelling since the beginning of time. So if people are used to it, it's just, yeah, when
like,
you're faced with,
like, to be honest,
yeah.
that's actually one of the top streamed songs on my playlist, on my DSPs, which is, it's a story, and it's something that was kind of a story like from a long time ago that I've gone through with somebody, or that I've been second or third hand to experience and see as an onlooker, right? So like, it all depends on where you want to go with it. But like,
yeah,
it's
definitely. I have another question here for the musicians. How do you get feedback from your fan base in a direct way? I've had some luck with stories, but that can be exhaustive. Linnea, do you want to? How do you gauge how people are feeling about your music when you release something?
How to gauge how they're feeling? I mean, there's always like the back end of your streaming apps. If you want to just simply look at that engagement with Apple or Spotify, there's Spotify for Artists, Apple for Artists apps, so you can see who's listening, like what their age range is, where they're located, to sort of get a grasp of that demographic. But in terms of like engaging, I think, I don't know if this is what you mean about having luck with stories, but that being exhaustive, but you can do an ask me anything on your Instagram stories. I have found that's the best way to like connect directly with people and sort of like have more maybe specific like conversations and more personal, if that's what you're looking for. But
yeah,
something that I like to do in retrospect to that is I put together I think the list maybe 30 to 40 people, which I know I can say they're authentic, genuine super fans, let's call them, friends, family, someone that's actually going to take a genuine listen. And they're one of the first type of people that I reach out to, give them an exclusive listen sometimes a day or two before, or you just reach out to those people. Like once you've gained that relationship, that's why it's so important to kind of put them down on the list. You make them feel more important, because like I said, like, let's be honest, they are important, right? They're giving the feedback to your life. So if 30, 40 people are kind of going in the general direct way, then you kind of know that you're going in the right direction. And as Alice is saying, honestly, that is nowadays with social media, algorithm type help apps behind the scenes, the back end stuff. It's giving us all of the information. It's just that a lot of artists aren't really doing the due diligence just to look, right?
Yeah.
You gotta look, so you've
got to dig in there. There's a lot to go through, but you've got to kind of pick the things that, the metrics that mean something to you in terms of success, and just look at those, ignore everything else, because it can get a bit overwhelming if you're not a very analytical person. But that, yeah, there are definitely, and I would say, like, for those core fans that you do want to communicate and you want to get feedback from, offer them exclusives. Like you said, offer them a preview of a song or a video the day before, send them a demo, or, you know, private SoundCloud or something like that, just to let them know that they're being thought of, looked after, and that will build a lot of loyalty with them as well. So then that might open the dialogue for some direct feedback too. Okay, so we have 5 minutes left. So if there are any other further questions or anything anybody else wants to go over, thank you for everybody being here today. It was a really good discussion. It was a great group to chat to. Are there any projects any of you want to mention that you're working on, that you want to promote? We have a little time to, anything coming out, anything in the works, or you're all in like preparation mode right now?
Yeah, it's preparation mode because like the holidays are kind of coming up. I've kind of been working on my second EP, which I'm planning to release in the new year, right? So early in the new year. And I've been working with a film company, SD Productions, and we're working on a short film to be based behind it. I know, Joe, I've actually let you know about that.
Yeah.
It's kind of a short film, which I'm not going to be in, but my music is kind of going to piggyback with, and they're going to base the short film off of. So it's kind of like I'm building up these little things nice and early so that I can just prepare to drop the album. Or,
awesome. And where can we follow you? On Instagram?
On, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, LinkedIn, all that.
All of them. All of them.
Definitely.
Okay, awesome.
I'm having a tough time. Like I said, give yourself a chance, because like at first I was having a little bit of a tough time rebranding myself. I was thinking along going along with the name Boy Devil, right? But I was like, that's not authentic to who I am, right? So I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna stick with what I have, and I already switched over a few of my social media account names and such. And then you figure out that's not the way to go. Then you gotta jog all the way back, right? So, like I said, give yourself a chance, and yeah, follow me anywhere on JRBEDDLE. JR Bell.
Awesome. Thanks. Steph, what are you working on? Anything you can tell us about yet?
I'm gonna be honest, like not much. Getting ready to hibernate for the winter.
Yeah. you've probably been so busy this year with everything that's come out that now is the kind of the downtime until
Going to LA for the first week in November, and then when I come home I'm gonna slow down for a little bit. In a crazy couple months.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. And Linnea.
Honestly, I have released so many things during the pandemic, and I'm not eager to do that again. So I'm kind of just taking my time writing the next record and hoping to put it out when I can tour. But I did have one other thing that I wanted to mention that didn't come up in the conversation that I feel is important, and it's sort of just about capitalism, but like we're all trying to make money as artists, and that's awesome, but I think that people in general are so bombarded with advertisements in their news feeds, and now like targeted ads coming up about things you've spoken about when you didn't think anyone was listening to you, and it can be very invasive and exhausting, I think. So as an artist, I think it is important to promote yourself, but also that not everything you post about and talk about is promotional, because I think then it just comes off very corporate. You're another person just trying to sell something to people. And in that way, I think just what you put out there, whatever else you choose to talk about, but sharing other aspects of your work or of yourself that isn't just asking people for something is really important.
I agree. I tell my artists to do like a ratio. So like, 2 to 3 like fun, personal, whatever posts, and then 1 please stream or please buy a ticket or whatever. It can't be all asking. You need to give more than you ask. And that's, again, another way of building up that relationship. So we're out of time. Oh, yeah, sorry, we're out of time, but I just want to say thanks for everyone for coming. This is the 3rd day of the conference, so if you miss any of the discussions, they're being recorded and they'll be able to be watched back on Facebook and YouTube. Please check out the conference website at hamilton.ca/musician conference. Sign up for another topic. Tomorrow they're talking about mental health supports for musicians, and that's being presented in collaboration with Over the Bridge. You can still sign up via Eventbrite. And you can also watch the conversation live on Facebook at Hammont Music. Thank you everyone for your time today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.